The blizzard came like God's own fury that December afternoon. Wind screamed across the Montana plains at 50 miles per hour, turning snowflakes into frozen razors that could strip paint from wood and hope from the human heart. The temperature had dropped to 20 below zero, and any man foolish enough to stand in that wind for more than 10 minutes would lose fingers, toes, maybe his life. Cole McKenna stood on the platform of Thunder Creek Station anyway. He had been standing there for 40 minutes. 7 years of practice had taught him how to endure the cold, how to wrap his scarf just right, how to position his body to minimize exposure, how to keep his blood moving without wasting energy. 7 years of waiting at this same station once a month, always hoping for something he could never name, something to fill the hole where his heart used to be. Today was different. Today someone needed him. The train's whistle cut through the storm like a knife through silk. Cole straightened ice cracking off his shoulders. Through the wall of white, he could see the locomotive's headlamp, a dim yellow eye pushing through the chaos. The train was late. Should have arrived 2 hours ago. He had waited because that's what a man did when he made a promise. The cars screeched to a halt, wheels screaming against frozen rails. Steam hissed into the Arctic air. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just the wind, just the cold, just Cole standing alone on a platform in the middle of nowhere, waiting for strangers who might not even exist. Then the passenger car door opened. A woman stepped down into the blizzard. She was thin, too thin, her face hollow with exhaustion that went deeper than mere tiredness. Her coat was threadbare, patched in 3 places, completely inadequate for Montana winter. Her eyes swept the platform, searching, and when they found Cole, they showed no relief, only calculation, the hard mathematics of survival. Behind her came the children. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Cole's breath caught. The advertisement had said 9 children, but seeing them was different. The oldest was a young man, really 17 or so, standing rigid with the responsibility of trying to be something he wasn't ready to be. The youngest was a baby in the woman's arms, maybe 18 months, face red from crying in the cold. Between them, 7 more. A girl of 15 trying to comfort a younger one. A boy of 13, eyes burning with anger, Cole recognized from his own mirror. Children of 11, 9, 7, 5, 3. All of them shivering, all of them afraid. The 7-year-old girl slipped on the icy platform, went down hard on her knees. She didn't cry out, just struggled to stand alone because everyone else was too exhausted to help. Cole saw it happen and felt something crack open inside his chest. For just a moment the girl wasn't a stranger. She was Emily. His Emily. 4 years old, red hair, green eyes, the laugh that could make him forget he'd fought in a war. Emily dying of scarlet fever while he rode 30 miles through a blizzard to find a doctor who came too late. Emily cold in her mother's arms, both of them gone before he could say goodbye. 7 years ago. 7 years of living alone in a house too big for one man. 7 years of eating meals in silence. 7 years of waking in the night, reaching for a wife who would never be there again. Cole moved. He crossed the platform in 4 long strides, his limp barely noticeable, despite the old war wound in his left leg. The woman tensed, pulling the baby closer, and Cole saw it in her eyes. She expected cruelty, expected ownership, expected a man who had paid for passage to claim his property. Instead, Cole reached up and unbuttoned his heavy leather coat. The coat was thick, lined with sheepskin, the warmest thing he owned. He had worn it through 3 Montana winters. It had kept him alive through the battle of the wilderness, through the long march home from the war, through nights when the temperature dropped so low that men froze to death in their beds. He wrapped it around the woman and the baby in one smooth motion. His voice, when he spoke, was deeper than she expected, rougher. The voice of a man who didn't talk much anymore because there was no one to talk to. The baby's cold. Let's get you home. Not a question, not a demand, just a statement of fact and a promise of warmth. The woman stared at him. The baby Henry had stopped crying, soothed by the sudden heat of the coat. It smelled like wood smoke and leather and the particular scent of a man who worked hard for everything he had. "Sir, you'll freeze," she managed. "I've survived worse." And he had. The war had taught him that. Gettysburg, Antietam, the wilderness where men burned alive in the forest fires that raged during the battle, their screams echoing for miles. He had survived all of it only to come home and watch his wife and daughter die of a fever he couldn't fight with a rifle. Cole turned to the oldest boy who was watching him with suspicion that bordered on hostility. "You're the eldest." The young man stepped forward, protective. "I am. Cole McKenna. Most folks call me Cole." He extended his hand. The boy hesitated, then shook it. His grip was strong, but his hands were shaking from cold, not fear. "You've been carrying a lot, son. I can see it in your shoulders." It was true. The boy stood like a man twice his age, bent under invisible weight. The weight of being responsible, the weight of trying to be a father when you're barely more than a child yourself. "Someone had to," the boy said. "Not anymore. That's my job now." Something flickered in the young man's eyes. Confusion, maybe, or the first small seed of hope that someone else might share the burden he'd carried alone for too long. Cole moved down the line of children. The 13-year-old boy was glaring at him with pure hatred. Cole didn't react. He'd seen that look before in the mirror after Sarah died. Anger was easier than grief. Rage was safer than admitting you were broken. He crouched down to the 7-year-old girl, the one who had fallen. She shrank back, pressing against the woman Cole assumed was her mother. "I'm not going to hurt you." His voice dropped lower, softer, the voice he used to use with Emily when she had nightmares. "See that big sleigh over there? Got blankets in it. Hot bricks to warm your feet. You want to get warm?" The girl looked up at her mother, asking permission, seeking safety. The woman's voice was steady despite her fear. "It's all right, sweetheart." Cole straightened. "We need to move. Storm's getting worse. Sleigh's this way." He didn't wait for agreement, didn't ask permission. Just started walking toward a large covered sleigh hitched to 2 massive draft horses. Thunder and Lightning Brothers, the best team in 3 counties. He'd trained them himself, and they'd pull through hell if he asked. The woman gathered her children and followed, because what choice did she have? She had sold herself to a stranger, written an advertisement offering her body and her labor in exchange for safety for her children. She had expected a master, maybe a cruel one, certainly a demanding one. Instead, she had found a man who gave his coat away in a blizzard. The sleigh was larger than she expected. Canvas stretched over a wooden frame, creating a sheltered space. Inside, lanterns cast golden light, and blankets were piled high. Someone had prepared for them. Someone had cared enough to make sure 10 freezing people would have a chance to survive the journey. "Everybody in," Cole said. He lifted the 7-year-old first, setting her gently among the blankets. "Mind the lanterns." Then the 3-year-old, then the 5-year-old. One by one he helped the children into the sleigh, and his hands were gentle, despite their size and the scars that marked them. Even the 13-year-old Nathan, who tried to climb in himself and nearly slipped on the icy runner. Cole caught his arm without comment and steadied him. "I don't need help," Nathan snapped. "Didn't say you did." Cole released him and moved on. When all the children were settled, Cole turned to the woman. Elizabeth, Eliza. He had memorized her name from the advertisement she'd placed in the Cincinnati paper. Elizabeth Hartwell, widow, 29 years old, 9 children, desperate. She stood holding the baby, and Cole could see exhaustion crashing over her like waves. Weeks of travel, months of fear, years of watching everything she'd built crumble to nothing. "Ma'am?" She tried to step up into the sleigh, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Too tired, too cold, too afraid. "I can manage," she said, but her voice shook. "I know you can." Cole didn't touch her, didn't reach for her, just stood close enough to catch her if she fell. "But you don't have to." Eliza stared at him, snow caught in his dark hair, already graying at the temples. He looked older than his 37 years, weathered by war and loss, and 7 Montana winters lived alone. His face was hard-scarred, weather-beaten by sun and wind and years of outdoor work. Not handsome, not gentle-looking, but his eyes were steady, clear, the eyes of a man who meant what he said. "Why are you being kind?" The words escaped before she could stop them. "You paid for us. You could be anything you want." "I could." Cole's voice didn't change. "I'm choosing to be kind." That going to be a problem? Eliza felt tears freeze on her cheeks. She had prepared herself for cruelty, for ownership, for the kind of man who would see 9 children as burden or nuisance or something worse. "No," she whispered. "No problem." He helped her into the sleigh, his hand strong but careful, and Eliza settled beside the 15-year-old girl with Henry in her arms. The baby had fallen asleep warm for the first time in days. Cole climbed into the driver's seat. Everyone settled. A chorus of small voices answered yes, though most were too stunned to speak clearly. "Then let's go home." The journey through the storm took forever, and no time at all. Eliza dozed fitfully, waking whenever the sleigh lurched or the wind screamed louder. Each time she opened her eyes, she could see Cole's silhouette at the front, steady, patient, driving through a blizzard that should have stopped any sensible man. The 15-year-old Grace whispered, "Mama, he's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone cruel, someone who'd look at us like we were cattle he'd bought." Grace's eyes were on Cole's back. "He looked at us like we were people." "That doesn't mean anything yet," Eliza said, though she wanted desperately to believe it did. "Pa always said you could judge a man by how he treated people who couldn't fight back." Grace pulled the blanket tighter around the 3-year-old Lucy. "We can't fight back. None of us can. And he's still being kind." Eliza said nothing. Her daughter's words cut too close to the hope she couldn't afford to feel. The oldest boy, Matthew, sat near the front of the sleigh watching Cole with unblinking intensity. "You should sleep," Eliza murmured to him. "Someone has to keep watch." "Son." "I won't let anything happen to you, Ma, any of you. If he turns out to be—" Matthew's jaw worked. "If he turns out to be cruel, we'll figure it out. But I'll watch first, judge later." The sleigh pushed on through the white darkness. Eventually, Cole's voice cut through the wind. "We're here." Eliza jerked awake. Through a gap in the canvas shapes emerged from the snow. A large house smoke rising from its chimney. A massive barn. Outbuildings half buried in drifts. This was it. McKenna Ranch. The place that would be their home or their prison, depending on the kind of man Cole McKenna truly was. Cole appeared at the back of the sleigh. "I'll carry the little one's Zans. You get the others moving." He lifted the 7-year-old Emma and the 5-year-old James, one on each arm. They curled against him without hesitation, seeking warmth, seeking safety in a man they'd known for less than an hour. Eliza roused her other children, and they stumbled through knee-deep snow toward the house. The door flew open before they reached it. A gray-haired woman stood in the firelight face, stern as stone. She took one look at the frozen, exhausted group, and her expression softened just slightly. "Lord have mercy," she said. "Get them inside now. Heat. Real heat." Eliza hadn't felt heat like this in months. The farmhouse in Ohio had been impossible to warm. After William died, their firewood sold for food money. But this house blazed with warmth. A massive fireplace roared at one end. An iron stove radiated heat from the kitchen. And the smell. Stew. Fresh bread. Something sweet baking. Eliza's knees buckled. Strong hands caught her. Cole. "Abby, take the baby. She's about to fall." The gray-haired woman, Abby, lifted Henry from Eliza's arms with practiced efficiency. "Sit her by the fire. Get something hot in her." Eliza found herself in a chair, a blanket around her shoulders, a cup of warm cider pressed into her hands. "Drink," Abby ordered. "Slowly. You'll make yourself sick if you gulp." Around her, chaos organized itself. Abby directed the children toward the fire, toward blankets, toward food. Cole moved among them, checking fingers for frostbite, ensuring everyone was warming safely. "This one's feet are bad," Cole said, crouched before Emma, her small feet in his large hands. "Abby, warm water, not hot, lukewarm first." "I know how to treat frostbite." Abby snapped, but she was already moving. Eliza watched as Cole examined each of her children, gentle, thorough, his scarred face intent with concentration. "You're going to be fine," he told Emma, wrapping her feet carefully. "Cold feet hurt when they warm up. That's normal. Don't be scared." "All right," Emma whispered. "Can I have more stew?" Thomas asked, his bowl already empty. "Much as you want. Abby made plenty." "Why?" Nathan's voice cut through the warmth. "Why'd you make so much food for people you've never met?" Abby turned to face him, hands on hips. "Because it's what decent folks do. Now eat your supper and mind your tongue." "Nathan," Eliza's voice held warning, "it's a fair question." Cole moved to stand before Nathan, not looming, but not backing down either. "You want to know why I'm being kind? Why I'm feeding you, warming you, taking you into my house?" "Yeah." Nathan's chin lifted. "I do. Because I know what it's like to have nothing, to lose everything, to be so alone and desperate you'd do anything just to survive another day." Something flickered in Nathan's eyes. "Your mother answered my advertisement because she had no choice," Cole continued, "but I answered hers because I wanted to. I've got this big house, this land, this life, and no one to share it with. Your family needed a home. I needed a family. So here we are." "So we're charity," Nathan said flatly. "No, you're hope. First hope I've had in years." Nathan stared at him for a long moment. His jaw worked. His fists clenched at his sides. Then he turned away and said nothing. But Eliza saw something shift in her son's expression. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the first crack in the armor of his anger. The evening wound down slowly. Children were fed until even Thomas stopped asking for more. Blankets were distributed. Hot water was prepared for washing. Eliza sat by the fire, Henry asleep in her lap, watching her children begin to relax. Grace was helping the younger girls brush their hair. Charlotte had found a corner and was quietly observing everything, storing details away like the intelligent child she was. Even Matthew had stopped standing guard long enough to eat his second bowl of stew. "They're beautiful." Eliza startled. Cole had appeared beside her chair, moving quietly for such a large man. "What? Your children? They're beautiful. You must be proud." No one had said that since William died. No one had looked at her 9 children and seen anything but burden, mouths to feed, bodies to clothe, problems to be solved or avoided. "I am," Eliza whispered, "I am proud." Cole sat on a low stool, keeping himself below her eye level, not threatening, not dominant. "The little one. How old?" 18 months, Henry. He never knew his father." "No." Eliza's arms tightened around her baby. "William died 2 weeks after he was born. I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't know him." "I know what it's like to lose someone." Cole's voice went rough. "Wife and baby. 7 years ago. Fever took them both in 2 days." Eliza looked at him, really looked, past the scar, past the hard face, past the frontier roughness. She saw grief there, old and deep and never quite healed. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't know them." He echoed her words back, and something like a smile flickered across his face. "But that's why I understand. Why I'm not going to ask more from you than you can give. We both know what it's like to love someone and lose them." "I haven't loved you," Eliza said, the truth stark and simple. "I know. But you might someday. And if you don't, that's all right too. I didn't bring you here for love. I brought you here for partnership." "Partnership. My ranch needs someone to manage the household. Someone smart enough to keep things running while I'm out working the land." Cole gestured around him. "Abby does her best, but she's one woman. Your children will grow, need education, need direction. This house needs life in it." And what do I get? A home, safety, food for your children, a say in how things are run, time to heal, time to decide what you want. Cole paused. I won't rush you, won't pressure you. If you want our arrangement to stay purely practical forever, that's fine. If someday you want more— He stopped himself. Well, we can talk about that when it comes. Eliza stared at him, this scarred man who had wrapped her in his coat in a blizzard, who had prepared a warm sleigh for 10 strangers, who sat now on a low stool offering partnership instead of ownership. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A man who'd want to own me, use me, break me. Cole's expression darkened. Someone hurt you before your husband. My father. The words came out flat. He believed women were property. Told me my whole life I was only good for one thing. He was wrong. How do you know you've known me 3 hours? Because I can see it. The way your children look at you. The way you carried them across a continent with nothing but will and love. The way you're sitting here right now exhausted and scared and still watching everything, still ready to fight if you need to. He stood. You're not property, Elizabeth. You're a survivor, and survivors deserve kindness. Abby appeared to shepherd the children toward a bed. Eliza learned that 3 rooms had been prepared. Girls would share one, boys another, and Eliza would have the 3rd with Henry. More rooms in the spring, Cole said. Once the weather breaks, I'll build more. Every child deserves their own space eventually. Might take a while, but I'll get it done. The children moved reluctantly toward bed, exhausted but overstimulated by the strangeness of everything. Grace helped with the younger girls. Matthew took charge of the boys. Nathan lingered. Where do you sleep? He demanded of Cole. My room's at the far end of the hall, away from your mother's. That's supposed to make me feel better. It's supposed to tell you the truth. I'm not going to touch your mother unless she wants me to. I'm not going to force myself into her room or her bed. That's her choice, always. And if I don't believe you, then watch. Decide for yourself. Cole didn't flinch. You're old enough to make your own judgments. I'd rather earn your trust than demand it. Nathan stared at him for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of doubt about his assumptions. Fine, he muttered, and stalked away toward the boys' room. Then it was just Cole and Eliza. The fire crackled. Wind howled outside. Henry slept against Eliza's chest, warm and peaceful for the first time in weeks. You should sleep, Cole said. Long day, long journey. I know. Eliza didn't move. I just keep waiting for the trap. The trap. The moment you show your true self. Every man I've ever known has had a moment like that, when the mask comes off. Cole was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. I don't have a mask, Elizabeth. I'm not a gentleman. I'm not a soft man. I've killed men in the war, and I've done things I'm not proud of to survive. He crouched beside her chair, putting himself at her level. But I've never hurt a woman, never hurt a child, and I never will. That's not a mask. That's who I am. And if you never believe anything else I tell me, believe that. Eliza searched his face, looking for lies, looking for cracks in the certainty. She found none. All right, she whispered. I'll try to believe you. That's all I ask. Cole stood. Your room's the last door on the left. Extra blankets in the closet. Abby put warm water in the pitcher. He moved toward the hallway, then paused. Elizabeth. Yes? Whatever happens from here, thank you for coming, for bringing your children, for giving me a chance. His voice roughened. This house has been empty for too long, having life in it again. He didn't finish, just nodded once and disappeared down the hall. Eliza sat alone in the firelight, her baby in her arms, her children sleeping safely nearby. She had expected a prison. She had expected cruelty. Instead, she had found a scarred man with gentle hands, offering her something she'd never thought she'd have again. Hope. Morning came too early and too bright. Sunlight poured through the window of the room Eliza shared with Henry, reflecting off snow so white it hurt to look at. She woke with a start, disoriented, reaching instinctively for children who weren't there before remembering. They were safe. In other rooms, in a house that was warm. The house was already alive with sound, footsteps, voices, the clatter of pots and pans from somewhere below. Eliza sat up, her body aching from weeks of travel, months of tension, years of carrying weight no woman should have to carry alone. Henry stirred in the cradle beside her bed, the cradle Cole had made, she realized now, looking at it in daylight. Hand-carved. Each spindle turned with care, the kind of thing a man makes when he has time and skill and wants to do something right. She picked up her son, changed him with the cloth diapers that had been left in the room, and went downstairs. The kitchen was chaos. Good chaos. The kind that comes from too many people in too small a space, all of them doing something that matters. Abby stood at the massive iron stove, cooking what looked like enough food to feed an army. Grace was setting the table, counting places. Matthew was hauling wood for the fire. The younger children sat at the long table faces, scrubbed clean hair combed, looking more alive than they had in months. Cole stood by the window, already dressed for outdoor work. Heavy canvas pants, wool shirt, boots that had seen 1,000 miles of hard use. He was drinking coffee from a tin cup, looking out at the morning like a man checking for threats only he could see. He turned when Eliza entered. "Morning, you sleep all right?" "Better than I have in a long time." "Good, sit. Abby's made breakfast." It wasn't a suggestion. It was the kind of gentle command that came from a man used to being in charge but trying not to be overbearing about it. Eliza sat. The breakfast that appeared before her was staggering. Eggs, bacon, flapjacks, fresh milk, butter, jam. More food than her entire family had eaten in a week back in Ohio. One by one the children came downstairs, still cautious, still uncertain. But the smell of food was stronger than fear, and they sat. "Eat as much as you want," Cole said. "Day's going to be long. You'll need it." Thomas needed no further encouragement. He attacked his plate like a starving wolf. James followed suit. Even Emma shy. Emma ate with the kind of focus that comes from months of genuine hunger. Matthew cleared his throat. "Sir, Mr. McKenna, I can help with the work today. I know farming. I can pull my weight." Cole studied the young man, 17 years old and trying so hard to be older, trying to be the father his siblings had lost. The weight of it showed in the set of his shoulders, the way he held himself like a soldier at attention. "You know horses?" "Some. We had 2 back in Ohio before we had to sell them." "Come out to the barn after breakfast. I'll show you what needs doing." Cole paused. "And Matthew, you don't have to earn your place here. It's already yours. But if you want to work, I'll teach you what I know." Something shifted in Matthew's face. Not quite relief, not quite hope, but something close to both. Nathan sat as far from Cole as the table allowed, eating little, watching everything. His anger from the night before hadn't diminished. If anything, it had crystallized into something harder, more focused. Cole didn't push, didn't try to win him over. Just let the boy be angry, because sometimes anger is all a person has left. After breakfast, Cole headed for the door. Matthew followed. Nathan, after a long moment, followed too. Not because he wanted to, because he couldn't stand not knowing what was happening. The barn was massive, easily big enough for 40 head of cattle, though Cole said he only kept 20 through the winter. 24 horses, chickens in a separate coop, pigs in a pen that had been designed to keep them warm even in the worst cold. Cole showed Matthew how to muck stalls, how to fork hay, how to check hooves for stones and rot. Basic work, but important. The kind of thing that kept animals alive through a Montana winter. Nathan leaned against a post, arms crossed, radiating hostility. "You don't want to help. You don't have to," Cole said without looking at him. "But you're going to watch anyway, so you might as well learn something. I don't need to learn anything from you. Maybe not. But your brothers and sisters might need you to know this someday. Up to you. It was perfect. Not arguing, not forcing, just presenting the truth and letting Nathan make his own choice. The boy's jaw worked, but he stayed, watching, learning despite himself. An hour later, Cole brought out 2 pistols, revolvers, Army issue from the war, well-maintained, but clearly used. "We're going to learn to shoot," Cole said. Matthew's eyes widened. "Shooting? Montana's not Ohio. There's bears, wolves, sometimes men who mean harm. You need to know how to protect yourself. More important, you need to know how to protect your family." They walked to a clearing behind the barn where Cole had set up targets. Straw bales with circles painted on wood. He showed them how to hold the gun, how to sight down the barrel, how to breathe and squeeze instead of jerking the trigger. Matthew learned quickly, his hands steady despite his youth. Nathan refused to touch the gun. "Suit yourself," Cole said. He left the second pistol on a stump. "It's here when you're ready." They practiced for half an hour, Matthew hitting the target more often than missing by the end, Cole offering corrections that were clear and kind, never harsh. Then Nathan picked up the gun. He didn't say anything, just walked to the line, raised the pistol, and fired. The bullet hit dead center. Cole nodded. "Good, you've got the hands for it. Natural talent." Nathan wanted to reject the praise, wanted to throw it back in Cole's face. But there was a small, treacherous part of him that felt proud, that remembered his real father teaching him to shoot squirrels back in Ohio, telling him he had good eyes. After Nathan had emptied the cylinder, Cole called Matthew over. "Son, can you take the guns back to the barn? Clean them with the oil in the tack room. I need to talk to Nathan a minute." Matthew nodded and left. Smart boy. He understood when adults needed to talk without an audience. Cole waited until they were alone. Then he sat on the stump where the pistol had been, putting himself lower than Nathan, not looming, not threatening. "You're angry with me." "I'm not angry," Nathan lied. "Yes, you are, and that's all right. You've got reason to be angry at the world. Your father died. Your mother had to sell herself to a stranger. You had to leave everything you knew. That's enough to make anyone furious." Nathan's fists clenched. "You don't know anything about me. I know more than you think. I was 13 once. My father died when I was your age. Farming accident. Left my mother with 4 kids and a mortgage she couldn't pay. I was angry for years. Took it out on everyone who tried to help." This caught Nathan off guard. "What happened?" "Eventually, I learned that being angry didn't bring him back, didn't make things better. Just made me more alone." Cole stood. "I'm not trying to replace your father, Nathan. I couldn't even if I wanted to. But I can be someone who helps carry what he left behind, if you'll let me." Nathan stared at the ground. "I don't know how to let you." "That's all right, we've got time." They walked back to the barn in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before, less hostile, more thoughtful. That night Eliza woke to screaming, not her children. A man's voice raw with terror and pain. She threw off the blankets and ran toward the sound heart, pounding. She found Cole in the hallway, pressed against the wall, gasping for air like a drowning man. His eyes were open, but he wasn't seeing the hall. He was somewhere else, somewhere terrible. His hands clawed at his chest. His whole body shook with tremors she could feel from 5 feet away. "No," he choked out. "No, not again, not them. Please, God, not them." Nathan appeared from the boys' room, followed by Matthew. Grace emerged with the younger girls behind her. They all stared at Cole, this strong man, reduced to trembling wreck by whatever demons haunted his sleep. Eliza had seen this before. William's brother had come back from the war with the same haunted look, the same night terrors that left him screaming for hours. Most people ran from it. Eliza had learned to stay. She moved closer, slowly, carefully. "Cole, you're home. You're safe." He didn't hear her, lost in whatever nightmare had followed him from sleep. "The smoke," he gasped. "Can't breathe. They're burning. They're all burning." No one's burning. Eliza reached out and touched his arm gently, just enough contact to anchor him. Feel that. That's my hand. You're in your house in Montana. The war is over. Cole's eyes finally focused, found her face, then saw the children behind her. Shame flooded his features. God, I woke you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't apologize. The children are fine. They didn't hear much. She kept her hand on his arm. Come sit down. I'll make coffee. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. She guided him toward the kitchen, surprised when he let her. The fire in the stove had burned low, but embers still glowed. Eliza added wood, filled the kettle, moved through the motions, while Cole sat at the table with his head in his hands. Does this happen often? She asked quietly. Often enough. His voice was muffled. Usually I go outside, walk it off. Didn't make it that far tonight. The war. He nodded without looking up. Eliza poured coffee when it was ready, set a cup before him, and sat across the table. The kitchen was dark except for the glow from the stove. Intimate. Quiet. My husband's brother had nightmares like yours. He'd wake screaming about Gettysburg, about the things he saw there. What happened to him? Drank himself to death, couldn't live with the memories. Cole finally looked up. His face was haggard, older in the dim light. Sometimes I understand that impulse. But you don't drink? No. Came close those first years after Sarah and the baby died. Had a bottle in my hand more nights than I can count. What stopped you? Spite, mostly. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Told myself if I survived the war just to die drunk in a ditch, the whole thing was pointless. So I kept going. Built this place. Tried to make something worth surviving for. And did you? Cole looked around the dark kitchen. Thought I had. Then I realized I was building it for nobody. Just walls and cattle and empty rooms. His eyes found hers. That's why I answered your advertisement. I was so tired of being alone. Eliza set down her cup. I should tell you something. All right. When I wrote that advertisement, I was ready to accept anything, any man, any situation, any cruelty. I'd convinced myself that whatever happened to me didn't matter as long as my children survived. That's a terrible way to think about yourself. It's the truth. Eliza's voice didn't waver. I want you to understand what you're dealing with. I'm not some hopeful young bride looking for romance. I'm a woman who sold herself to feed her children. Whatever kindness you show me, I won't know what to do with it. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then I'll show you anyway. And you can learn. They sat in silence as the fire crackled and the first gray light of dawn began to seep through the windows. Behind them, unnoticed, Nathan stood in the doorway. He had followed them down, unable to sleep after seeing Cole's breakdown. He heard everything. The talk about war, about losing wives and children, about spite and survival and being alone. Nathan had hated Cole yesterday, had been so sure this man was the enemy, someone taking his father's place, someone who couldn't possibly understand what they'd lost. But Cole had lost too, had screamed in the night about people burning, had built a whole ranch just to fill the emptiness of losing his family. Nathan turned and went back upstairs. He didn't hate Cole anymore. He didn't know what he felt, but it wasn't hate. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Cole rose before dawn, worked until dark. Matthew followed him everywhere, learning ranch work with the intensity of someone trying to prove his worth. Nathan watched from a distance, still not ready to fully participate, but no longer actively hostile. Grace helped Abby in the kitchen, learning to cook on the massive iron stove. The older woman's stern demeanor softened slightly in her presence. "You're good at this," Abby said one afternoon, watching Grace knead bread dough. "Natural touch. Mama taught me, before Papa died." Grace's hands moved with practiced efficiency. She said a woman who can cook will never starve. "Your mama's a wise woman. She's a scared woman." Grace looked up. "But she's trying to be brave." Abby studied the girl, 15 years old, and already carrying burdens that should belong to someone twice her age. You've been taking care of your siblings a long time, haven't you? 4 years, since Papa got sick. 4 years. Abby shook her head. That's too long for a child to be grown up. I didn't have a choice. Abby set down the pot she'd been scrubbing and turned to face Grace fully. But you do now. Here, you can be 15. You can learn and play and not have to worry about whether your brothers and sisters will eat tomorrow. Let the adults do the worrying. Grace's hands stilled in the dough. Her eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for so long, she'd forgotten they were there. I don't know how to stop worrying, she whispered. You learn, same way you learn to do everything else, one day at a time. Abby pulled the girl into a hug, flour dusting them both. You're a good daughter, a good sister, but you're also a child who deserves to be a child. Remember that. Grace broke. She cried into Abby's shoulder, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. All the fear and exhaustion and responsibility she'd carried for 4 years came pouring out in the safety of an old woman's arms. Abby held her and said nothing. Just let her cry. Sometimes that's all another person needs, someone to hold them while they fall apart. The younger children adapted faster. Thomas learned to ride Cole patiently, teaching him until the boy could sit a horse without falling. Charlotte discovered Cole's library and spent hours reading books she'd never imagined existed. James asked 1,000 questions, and Cole answered every single one. Even little Lucy, only 3, began to relax. She would climb into Cole's lap during meals, fall asleep there, and he would sit perfectly still for hours rather than wake her. One evening, Eliza found them like that. Cole in his chair by the fire, Lucy curled against his chest, both of them dozing. The sight made something in her chest ache. William had been a good father, had loved their children, but he'd never had this kind of patience, this kind of gentle strength. Cole's eyes opened. Sorry, didn't want to move her. Don't apologize. Eliza sat in the chair beside his. She looks peaceful. She's a sweet girl. They all are. Even Nathan, Cole smiled. Especially Nathan. He's got fire in him. Spirit. The world tries to break that out of boys. I'm glad it hasn't broken him yet. He's starting to like you, I can tell. Maybe. Or maybe he's just too tired to keep hating. Either way, I'll take it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside wind howled against the windows but couldn't reach them. They were safe. Warm. Together. Cole, yeah. Thank you. For this. For all of it. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You didn't have to take us in. Didn't have to be kind. You could have been anything, and we would have stayed because we had nowhere else to go, but you chose to be good. Cole looked down at Lucy sleeping against him. I'm not good, Elizabeth. I've done terrible things, killed men, hurt people who maybe didn't deserve it. I'm trying to be better, that's all. Trying to be the kind of man Sarah would have wanted me to be. I think she'd be proud of who you are. I hope so. A week passed, then 2. The children grew more comfortable. Matthew worked alongside Cole like he'd been doing it for years. Grace smiled more. Nathan stopped glaring quite so much. The younger ones laughed and played and acted like children instead of refugees. Eliza felt herself changing too, relaxing in ways she hadn't since William got sick, starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work, that maybe Cole was exactly who he appeared to be, a good man trying to do right by people who needed him. Then the letter came. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by the postmaster from Silver Falls, who made the trip once a week when weather allowed. Thick envelope, expensive paper. Return address from Cincinnati, Ohio. Cole opened it at the kitchen table, while Eliza watched her stomach knotting with sudden dread. His face went pale as he read. Then hard. The kind of hard that came before violence. What is it? Eliza asked, though part of her already knew. Cole handed her the letter without a word. The handwriting was elegant, educated. The words were poison. Elizabeth, did you think distance would save you? I have found you. The debt your father owed $8,000 plus interest is now your burden. You had two choices when we last spoke. Marry me and clear the debt or face legal consequences. You chose to run. That was a mistake. I am coming to collect what is rightfully mine. You and certain property your current benefactor possesses. Yes, I know about Mr. McKenna's land, about what lies beneath it. You have until February 1st to return to Cincinnati voluntarily. Otherwise, I will bring lawyers, sheriffs, and federal marshals. I will take you by force if necessary. And your children, those 9 burdens you drag behind you, will be placed in orphanages across 3 territories where you will never see them again. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Sincerely, Vincent Ashford. Eliza's hands shook so badly the paper rattled. He found me. God help me, he found me. Who is Vincent Ashford? Cole's voice was deadly calm. He's the man my father owed money to, the man who said I belonged to him because of my father's debts, the man I ran from. Tell me everything. So she did. About her father's drinking and gambling, about the debt to Ashford, a wealthy banker in Cincinnati, about the contract her father supposedly signed promising Eliza in marriage to settle his accounts, about Ashford showing up after her father died, claiming legal right to her, about running in the middle of the night with 9 children and nothing else. Cole listened without interrupting. When she finished, he stood and walked to the window looking out at his land, his ranch, the place he'd built from nothing over 7 years of brutal work. He mentioned my property, what lies beneath it. I don't understand. Gold. Cole turned to face her. Last summer surveyors came through, said there were signs of gold deposits on my land. I didn't care. I raise cattle, not dig holes. But they filed reports. Public record. If Ashford has good investigators, he'd know. So he doesn't just want me. He wants your land. Seems that way. Eliza felt the world tilting. I'll go. I'll go back to Cincinnati. I won't let him hurt you or take your ranch because of me. Cole crossed the room in 3 strides and took her shoulders, not hard, but firm enough that she had to look at him. You're not going anywhere. Cole, you don't understand. He has money, power. He'll destroy you. Let him try. Cole's eyes blazed. You came here for safety. I promised you safety. I don't break my promises, Elizabeth. Not for money, not for land, not for anything. But your ranch is just dirt and grass. You and your children are people, living, breathing people who need protecting. That matters more than any gold in the ground. Tears spilled down Eliza's cheeks. Why would you risk everything for us? Because 7 years ago, I couldn't save the people I loved. Maybe I can save you. And maybe that's what I've been waiting for all along, a chance to be the man I should have been. He pulled her into his arms, and Eliza let herself be held. Let herself believe just for a moment that someone strong enough to stand against Vincent Ashford had chosen to stand with her instead. Outside, snow began to fall again. Winter in Montana was far from over, and the real storm was just beginning. Cole called a meeting that same afternoon. Not just Eliza, but everyone old enough to understand what was at stake. Matthew, Nathan, Grace, and Charlotte sat around the long kitchen table. Abby stood by the stove, arms crossed. Zeke Thompson, the oldest ranch hand, leaned against the doorframe. Even young Pete Carson, the cowboy who helped with the cattle, was there. The younger children were upstairs with Emma, watching them. They didn't need to hear this. Not yet. Cole placed Ashford's letter in the center of the table like a dead thing. "Elizabeth," he said, "tell them everything about Vincent Ashford. Don't leave anything out." Eliza's hands trembled in her lap. The shame of it all threatened to choke her, but she forced the words out. "Vincent Ashford is a banker in Cincinnati, one of the richest men in Ohio. When my husband William died, we lost the farm. My father, he drank, gambled. He borrowed money from Ashford, a lot of money, $8,000. Matthew's eyes widened. $8,000 was more money than most families saw in a lifetime. When my father died 6 months ago, Ashford came to collect. He said my father had signed a contract, that I was promised to him in marriage to settle the debt. Eliza's voice broke. He said if I didn't marry him, he'd have me arrested for theft. He'd take the children and separate them, send them to orphanages across different territories where they'd never see each other again. Nathan's fists clenched on the table. That's legal? A man can just buy another person. No, Cole said flatly. It's not legal, not anymore. But rich men like Ashford, they use the law like a weapon. They twist it, buy judges, intimidate sheriffs. Make illegal things look legal until someone with enough spine stands up to them. Zeke spoke up, his voice gravelly from age and hard living. But why chase her all the way to Montana, rich man, like that's got plenty of options? Don't make sense. Cole nodded. I've been thinking about that, and I think I know. He pulled out a piece of paper from his desk drawer, an official-looking document with a territorial seal. Last summer, surveyors came through here, government men doing geological surveys. They found signs of gold on my land. Not a lot, maybe, but enough. They filed a report with the territorial office in Helena. Understanding dawned on Abby's face. He knows about the gold. If he's got good investigators and a man with his money, would then yes, he knows. Cole looked at Eliza. He doesn't just want you, Elizabeth. He wants this land. If he marries you and something happens to me, you'd inherit the ranch. Then he'd own you and the land, everything. The room went silent. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Charlotte, quiet Charlotte, who rarely spoke, said, "He's going to try to kill you." Cole didn't soften it. Probably. Or find some legal way to take the land. Either way works for him. Then we fight. Matthew stood up, young and fierce. We don't let him take Mama. We don't let him take anything. Sit down, son. Cole's voice was gentle but firm. We're going to fight, but we're going to do it smart. Angry men make mistakes. We can't afford mistakes. He looked around the table at each of them. Here's what we know. Ashford has money and lawyers. He's got connections in Ohio, but this is Montana territory. Different laws, different judges. And we've got something he doesn't. What's that? Grace asked. The truth. And a community that doesn't take kindly to rich Easterners trying to steal from their neighbors. Zeke straightened. You want me to ride to the other ranches? Let them know what's coming. Tomorrow morning. Hit every ranch within 20 miles. Tell them we've got trouble and we might need help. They'll come, Zeke said with certainty. Frontier folks look after their own. Cole turned to Abby. Send word to Sheriff Garrett in Silver Falls. Tell him we need to talk. Soon. Consider it done. And I need to send a telegram to Helena. There's a lawyer there, Samuel Blackwood, best in the territory. He hates corruption, and he doesn't lose often. Cole paused. We're going to need him. Eliza shook her head. Cole, lawyers cost money. Good lawyers cost more money than I could ever repay. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. He met her eyes. And when this is over, when Ashford is gone and you're safe, we can talk about repayment if you want. But right now, I need you to let me do this. Let me help. Nathan spoke up, his voice harder than it had been since they arrived. What about the contract, the one Ashford says her father signed? What if it's real? Cole smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. Good question. Elizabeth, did your father know how to write? No, he was illiterate. He could barely write his own name. When he had to sign things, he just made an X. Then, if this contract has an actual signature on it, it's a forgery. We prove that the whole thing falls apart. For the first time since the letter arrived, hope flickered in Eliza's chest. You really think we can beat him? I think we can try. And trying's better than giving up. He stood, signaling the meeting was over, but before anyone could leave, he spoke again. One more thing. Ashford mentioned February 1st. That gives us 5 weeks. We use that time to prepare. We gather evidence. We build our case. And we get ready for whatever he brings. Cole's voice hardened. But I promise you all this. Vincent Ashford will not take Elizabeth. He will not separate this family, and he damn sure won't take my land. That's a promise. The fourth promise. Eliza heard it and felt something inside her shift. This man, this scarred stranger who had taken them in barely 3 weeks ago, was willing to fight for them, willing to risk everything. She didn't know if she loved him yet, but she knew she was starting to. The days before Christmas passed in a blur of preparation. Zeke rode out to the neighboring ranches and came back with promises of support. 20 families pledged to help if violence came. Sheriff Garrett visited and listened to the whole story with a grim expression. "Ashford's playing a dangerous game," Garrett said. "Montana Territory doesn't look kindly on debt slavery. We fought a war over that kind of thing, but he's right that he can bring federal pressure, make it a legal fight instead of a moral one." "Can you help?" Cole asked. "I can testify. I can bring other witnesses. And I can make sure that if Ashford tries anything physical, anything that puts people in danger, he'll answer for it under Montana law." Garrett stood to leave. "But Cole, you need to know, men like Ashford don't fight fair. He'll come at you sideways, through the courts, through intimidation, maybe through violence if he thinks he can get away with it. Let him come. I've faced worse." "I know you have. That's why I'm not worried about you." Garrett glanced at the children playing in the next room. "I'm worried about them." After the sheriff left, Cole found Eliza in the kitchen, helping Abby prepare bread for the week. Her hands worked the dough with practiced efficiency, but her mind was clearly elsewhere. "You're thinking about running," Cole said. It wasn't a question. Eliza stopped kneading. "How did you know?" "Because it's what I'd be thinking. Take the children, disappear, go to California or Oregon or somewhere. Ashford can't find you." Would it work? No. Cole pulled up a chair. Men like him don't stop. He'd hire investigators. Pinkertons, maybe. They'd find you eventually, and next time you'd have no one to help fight. "But if I stay, I put you in danger." "I've been in danger before. Survived it too." He reached out and stilled her hands on the dough. "Elizabeth, look at me." She did. His eyes were steady, certain. "I'm not going to let him take you. Not because you're some obligation or burden, but because it's the right thing to do, and because maybe, just maybe, I'm starting to care about you and your children more than I should." Eliza felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Cole, I can't. I'm not asking for anything, just telling you the truth. You deserve to know where I stand." Before she could respond, Thomas burst into the kitchen. "Mr. Cole, it's snowing again. Can we build a snow fort?" The moment broke. Cole smiled and ruffled the boy's hair. "Sure. Let me finish talking to your ma and I'll help." Christmas Eve arrived with clear skies and brutal cold. The kind of cold that made your breath freeze in your lungs and your face ache if you stayed outside too long. But inside, McKenna Ranch warmth and light pushed back against the winter darkness. Cole hadn't celebrated Christmas since Sarah and Emily died. He'd told himself he was too busy, too practical, that decorating and celebrating were wastes of time when there was work to be done. But Abby and the children had other ideas. A small pine tree appeared in the parlor cut from the woods behind the ranch. The children decorated it with strings of popcorn ribbons saved from packages, stars cut from paper. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. Eliza taught the children Christmas carols. Her voice was beautiful, clear, and pure, and Cole found himself stopping work just to listen. She sang "O Holy Night" with such feeling that even Abby had to wipe her eyes. For gifts, Cole had worked in secret for 2 weeks. He carved a small knife for Matthew, the handle inlaid with his initials. For Nathan, a similar knife but with different balance suited for throwing. For Grace, a small wooden box with a lock for keeping private things. For Charlotte, a leather-bound journal with blank pages waiting for her words. For Thomas, a wooden horse on wheels. For Emma, a doll carved from soft pine. For James, a set of wooden animals. For little Lucy, a rocking horse, small enough for her size. And for Henry, a cradle toy that spun and made soft sounds. For Eliza, he had something different. A shawl that Abby had knitted in secret, soft wool dyed a deep blue. Simple, but beautiful. When the children opened their gifts on Christmas morning, the noise was overwhelming. Laughter, shouting. Emma clutching her doll and crying because no one had ever given her something so precious before. Nathan held his knife like it was made of gold. "You made this, carved it myself, thought you might want something of your own. Thank you." The words were quiet, but they cost Nathan something to say. "Thank you, Pa." The words slipped out without Nathan realizing it. Pa. Not Mr. McKenna, not Cole. Pa. Cole's throat tightened. He pulled the boy into a brief, rough hug. "You're welcome, son." That evening, after the younger children had gone to bed exhausted from excitement and too much food, Cole and Eliza sat by the fire. The house was quiet except for the crackle of burning wood and the soft whistle of wind outside. "Thank you for today," Eliza said, "for the gifts, for the celebration, for making it special. Thank you for letting me be part of it. House hasn't felt like this in 7 years." She looked at him in the firelight, this man who had given so much and asked for so little. "Cole, I need to tell you something." "All right." "When I wrote that advertisement, when I offered myself to whoever would take us, I was ready for anything, any kind of man, any kind of life. I'd made peace with never being happy again." Cole waited, not interrupting. "But you've changed that. You've shown me that kindness exists, that good men still walk this earth. And She paused, gathering courage. "I think I'm starting to fall in love with you, and that terrifies me. Why? Because the last man I loved is buried in Ohio, because loving someone means you can lose them, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to survive that again." Cole reached out and took her hand. "I can't promise I won't die. None of us can, but I can promise that while I'm alive, I'll do everything in my power to protect you and your children, to be worthy of whatever you choose to give me, even if that's nothing." Eliza squeezed his hand. "It's not nothing. Not anymore." They sat like that for a long time, hands joined, watching the fire burn down to embers. Neither of them knew that their peace was about to shatter. 4 days later, on December 28th, the lookout came. Pete Carson had been watching the road as Cole had ordered, taking shifts with Zeke and John Crow. He came riding hard into the ranch yard, his horse lathered despite the cold. "They're coming. 8 riders, maybe a mile out." Cole's face went hard. He'd been expecting this, but hoped for more time. "Get everyone inside, now." The household moved with practiced efficiency. Eliza gathered the younger children, Grace and Charlotte, herded them toward the root cellar. Matthew and Nathan took up positions by the windows with rifles Cole had given them. Cole stepped out onto the porch, Zeke and John Crow flanking him. All 3 were armed. Matthew wanted to come too, but Cole had ordered him to stay inside with the others. "Your job is here, son, protecting your mother and the little ones. That's what matters." The riders came into view through the snow, 8 men on horseback, all dressed too fine for Montana winter. City clothes, Eastern styles. At their head rode a man who could only be Vincent Ashford. He was 46 but looked younger. Silver hair, perfectly groomed, expensive wool coat, leather gloves that had never seen real work. He sat his horse like a man who owned it, owned everything, owned the world. 7 hired guns rode behind him, hard men with dead eyes. Professionals. They stopped 30 yards from the house, close enough to talk, far enough to draw weapons if needed. Ashford smiled. It was the smile of a man who had never lost anything he wanted. "Good morning, Mr. McKenna. I am Vincent Ashford. I've come for what belongs to me." "Nothing here belongs to you." Cole's voice was flat, hard. "Turn around and leave." "How amusing. You harbor a woman who is legally promised to me. You interfere in a lawful debt collection, and you have the audacity to tell me to leave." Ashford pulled a paper from his coat. "I have documentation. A contract signed by Robert Hartwell promising his daughter Elizabeth in marriage to settle his debts, legal and binding. That contract is a forgery, and you know it. We'll let the courts decide. I've filed suit in the territorial court in Helena. Hearing is set for January 15th. Elizabeth is required to appear. If she doesn't, a warrant will be issued for her arrest." The door opened behind Cole. Eliza stepped out despite his order to stay inside. She looked at Ashford with all the hatred she'd been holding for months. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Ashford's smile widened. "Elizabeth, you look well. Better than when I last saw you running away in the middle of the night like a common thief." "I didn't steal anything from you." "You stole yourself. That's theft of the most personal kind." His eyes moved to the house behind her. 9 children, so many mouths to feed. Tell me, Elizabeth, do you really think this rancher can provide for them all? Or are you dragging them into poverty again? Cole stepped forward. "You've said your piece. Now get off my land." "Your land, yes." Ashford's eyes glittered. "Tell me, Mr. McKenna, how much do you know about what's beneath this land? About the geological surveys that were filed last summer, about the estimated value of certain mineral deposits?" So he was admitting it. Cole had been right. This wasn't about Eliza at all. It was about gold. "I know enough. I know you've got no legal claim to it, and I know you're using Elizabeth to try to get what you can't buy honestly." Ashford laughed. "Honestly, how quaint. Mr. McKenna, I'm giving you one chance to avoid considerable unpleasantness. Convince Elizabeth to return to Cincinnati with me. We'll be married. She'll live quite comfortably. And her children can remain here with you. Everyone wins. Except Elizabeth, who'd be your property. Marriage is a form of property, is it not? At least I'm offering comfort in exchange. What are you offering? A hard life on a frozen ranch. Poverty and struggle. I'm offering freedom." Cole's hand moved toward his gun, something you can't understand. One of Ashford's men moved his coat aside, revealing a pistol. Zeke and John Crow raised their rifles slightly. The air crackled with violence about to happen. Ashford raised a hand, stopping his men. "No need for bloodshed, not yet." He looked at Eliza. "You have until January 15th. Appear in court voluntarily, and I'll be lenient. Force me to come get you, and I'll make sure those 9 children are separated and sent to orphanages in 3 different territories. You'll never see them together again." He turned his horse. "Oh, and Mr. McKenna, a word of advice. Accidents happen on ranches, fires, livestock dying, men getting hurt. It would be terrible if something unfortunate occurred while you're distracted with legal matters." It was a threat, clear as day. He'd burn Cole out if he got the chance. "You come back here," Cole had said quietly, "and it won't be an accident that happens." Ashford's smile never wavered. "January 15th. Helena Courthouse. Don't be late." He rode away, his men following, but 2 of them remained on a distant ridge, watching, making sure Cole and Eliza knew they were being monitored. Eliza collapsed against Cole as soon as they were out of sight. "He means it. He'll separate the children. He'll burn the ranch. He'll destroy everything." Cole held her. "No, he won't. We're going to fight him in court. We're going to prove that contract is fake, and we're going to win." "How can you be so sure?" "Because we have something he doesn't. The truth. And truth has a way of coming out even when powerful men try to bury it." Inside the house, Nathan watched from the window. He'd heard everything, seen the threat in Ashford's eyes, seen the way the man looked at his mother like she was a thing to be owned. For the first time in his 13 years, Nathan understood what it meant to hate someone enough to kill them. And for the first time he was glad Cole McKenna had taught him to shoot. The first sign of trouble came 3 nights after Ashford's visit. Henry the baby developed a cough, small at first, the kind of thing that happens to children in winter. Nothing to worry about. By morning the cough had turned harsh, barking, the sound of air struggling to move through passages that were closing up. Lisa knew that sound. She'd heard it before with 2 of her other children. Once they'd survived, once they hadn't. "Abby," she called down the stairs, trying to keep the panic from her voice, "I need you." The older woman came quickly, took one look at Henry, and her face went grim. She touched his forehead and pulled her hand back fast. Fever. High one. She listened to his breathing. Lung fever. How long's he been like this? He was fine yesterday, just a little cough before bed. They turned fast at this age. Abby's voice was calm, but her eyes showed concern. We need to keep him cool. Not cold, but cool. And steam. Lots of steam. I'll get water boiling. The day passed in a blur of worry. Henry's fever climbed. 102 degrees, 103. By evening it had reached 104. His skin was hot to the touch. His breathing came in short, rasping gasps that sounded like tearing paper. Cole came in from evening chores to find Eliza rocking Henry, singing to him, tears streaming down her face. "He's getting worse," she said. "Abby's done everything she knows, but he's getting worse." Cole touched the baby's forehead and felt his own stomach drop. The child was burning up. At this temperature for this long, there could be brain damage. Death. "We need Dr. Pierce. He's in Silver Falls, 12 miles in good weather." Eliza looked toward the window where snow had started falling again. "The storm's coming back. No one can ride in that." "I can." "Cole, no, it's suicide. The temperature's dropping. The wind's picking up. You'll freeze before you get halfway there." Cole looked at Henry, the baby who'd never known his real father, who'd survived the journey from Ohio only to die here in what was supposed to be a safe place. He thought of Emily, his own daughter, dead at 4 because he hadn't been fast enough, hadn't tried hard enough, hadn't been willing to risk everything. "I made you a promise, Elizabeth. I said I'd keep you and your children safe. All of them." He stood. "That includes Henry. This is different. This is asking you to die for us. No, it's asking me to live for you. Big difference." He was already moving toward the door, pulling on his heaviest coat. "Keep him warm. Steam from the kettle. Abby knows what to do. I'll be back with the doctor before sunrise." Matthew appeared in the doorway. "I'm coming with you." "No." "Pa, you need someone to watch your back. I need you here, watching the house. Ashford's men are still out there on that ridge. If they see me leave, they might try something. Your job is to protect your mother and the little ones. That's more important than anything else." Matthew swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. Yes, Pa." It was the second time the boy had called him that. Cole gripped his shoulder. "You're the man of the house while I'm gone. Can you handle that?" "I can." "Good. Now get me 2 blankets and all the rope we've got. I need to prepare." By the time Cole was ready to leave, the storm had intensified. Wind howled at 40 miles per hour. Snow fell so thick you couldn't see 20 feet. The temperature had dropped to 25 below zero and falling fast. Zeke tried one more time to stop him. "Cole, this is madness. You'll never make it. The roads are gone. The markers are buried. You'll get lost and freeze." "Then I'll freeze trying instead of sitting here doing nothing." He climbed onto Thunder, his best horse. The big stallion shifted nervously, sensing the danger ahead. Cole leaned forward and spoke into the horse's ear. "I know, boy, I know it's bad. But there's a baby dying in that house. We're going to save him. You and me, like we've done everything else. Together." Thunder settled slightly. Trusting. This horse had carried Cole through 3 blizzards, 2 river crossings when the ice was breaking up, and 1 confrontation with a grizzly bear. If any animal could make it to Silver Falls and back, it was this one. Cole looked back at the house one time. Eliza stood in the window holding Henry. Even from here he could see the fear in her eyes. The desperate hope that he'd succeed. The terrible knowledge that he might not come back. He touched his hat to her and rode into the storm. The world became white chaos within minutes. Snow hit his face like thrown sand. Wind tried to tear him from the saddle. The cold was a living thing clawing at exposed skin, searching for ways into his coat, his boots any opening it could find. Cole wrapped his scarf around his face until only his eyes showed. Even then, ice formed on his eyelashes. He had to blink constantly to keep his vision clear. Navigation was impossible. The road had vanished under 2 feet of fresh snow. The landmarks he knew, the trees and rocks and fence posts that marked the way, were invisible in the whiteout. He was riding blind through a landscape that wanted to kill him. But Cole had one advantage. The war had taught him how to find his way in impossible conditions, how to read the angle of the wind, how to feel the slope of the land through the horse beneath him, how to trust his instincts when his eyes gave him nothing. He gave Thunder his head, letting the horse pick the safest path. Horses had better instincts for this than men. They could feel ice under snow, could sense when the ground dropped away into a ravine or rose into a hill. An hour passed. Cole's hands had gone numb inside his gloves. His feet were blocks of ice in his boots. His face burned where the wind hit it, despite the scarf. Hypothermia was setting in. He knew the signs, the shivering, the confusion, the overwhelming urge to just stop and rest. He thought about Sarah, about Emily, about the day he'd buried them on the hill behind the ranch, about standing over those graves and promising them he'd never love again, never let anyone close enough to hurt him the way losing them had hurt. He'd broken that promise. He was letting Eliza and her children into his heart. And now he was going to die in the snow because of it. No, not yet. Cole forced himself to sit straighter in the saddle, forced his frozen hands to grip the reins, forced Thunder forward when the horse tried to turn back toward home and warmth. Not yet, boy, we're not done yet. He didn't know how much longer he rode. Time lost meaning. There was only the wind and the cold and the desperate need to keep moving. If he stopped, he'd die. Simple as that. Then Thunder's ears pricked forward. The horse quickened his pace slightly. He'd sensed something. Shelter, maybe, or the smell of other horses. 5 minutes later, lights appeared through the snow. Faint, distant, but definitely there. Silver Falls. Cole almost sobbed with relief. They'd made it. Against all odds, through conditions that should have killed them both, they'd made it. He rode straight to Dr. Marcus Pierce's house and more or less fell off Thunder onto the front porch. His legs didn't want to work. He pounded on the door with fists he couldn't feel. The door opened. Dr. Pierce stood there in his nightshirt, gray hair wild, holding a lamp. "McKenna, good God, man, what are you doing out in this baby?" Cole's voice was a croak. His jaw wouldn't work right. Too cold. Lung fever. Dying. Need you. Now. Pierce took one look at Cole's condition and made a decision. "Come inside. You're hypothermic." "No time. Baby's dying." "You're dying. You ride back like this, you'll freeze solid before you make it halfway. Give me 2 minutes to dress and get my bag. You sit by the fire and thaw out enough to survive the trip back." Pierce was right. Cole knew it even through the fog of cold and exhaustion. He stumbled to the fireplace and collapsed in front of it. The heat hurt worse than the cold had. His hands and feet screamed as blood tried to return to frozen tissue. Pierce dressed in a blur of motion, throwing on layers of warm clothing, packing his medical bag with supplies. 2 minutes turned into 5, but Cole understood. The doctor was preparing to save not just Henry, but both of them. "All right, let's go." They rode back together, Pierce on his own horse, following Thunder. The storm hadn't let up. If anything, it had gotten worse. But now Cole had a guide light, another living person to keep him oriented. And Thunder knew the way home. The journey back felt longer than the journey out. Cole kept wanting to close his eyes, to rest, just for a minute. Pierce had to shake him twice to keep him conscious. "Stay with me, McKenna. We're almost there. Keep your eyes open." Cole thought about Eliza, about her hand in his on Christmas Eve, about the way she'd said she was falling in love with him, about Henry, that small life depending on him making it home. He held on to those thoughts like a drowning man holds onto a rope. Finally, blessedly, the lights of the ranch appeared. Matthew must have kept every lamp burning as a beacon. Smart boy. They rode into the yard and Matthew ran out with Zeke. Both of them grabbed Cole as he slid from the saddle. "Get the doctor to Henry. I'm all right." He wasn't all right. He could barely stand. But Henry mattered more. Pierce went inside at a run. Cole let Matthew and Zeke half carry him into the house. They stripped off his frozen coat, his ice-covered boots, his soaked-through clothes. Abby appeared with blankets and hot water bottles and coffee so strong it could strip paint. "You damn fool," she muttered, but her hands were gentle as she wrapped him in warmth. Riding out in that storm. Could have died. Had to. Baby needed help. Baby's got help now. You just rest. But Cole couldn't rest. Not while Henry's life hung in the balance. He sat by the parlor fire wrapped in blankets, drinking coffee, forcing warmth back into his body, while upstairs, Dr. Pierce fought to save a child's life. Eliza came down once briefly. Her eyes were red from crying. She knelt beside Cole's chair and took his frozen hands in hers. "You came back. You went, and you came back. Told you I would? You could have died. But I didn't. And now Henry's got a chance." He squeezed her hands as much as his numb fingers would allow. "How is he bad? The doctor's trying everything. Medicines, steam. But he's so small, Cole. He's so small, and the fever's so high." Cole pulled her against him, blankets and all. "He's strong. Got your stubbornness. Your will to survive. He'll make it." "How do you know?" "Because I promised, and I keep my promises." Upstairs, Nathan sat outside the room where Pierce worked on Henry. His young face was set in hard lines. When Eliza and Cole came up later, he spoke without looking at them. "I'm sorry." "For what, son?" Cole asked. "For hating you when we first got here. For thinking you were like the others. Like the men who looked at Ma and saw something to use." Nathan's voice cracked. "You rode through a blizzard to save my baby brother. You almost died. I was wrong about you." Cole sat beside him on the floor. "You weren't wrong to be cautious. You were protecting your family. That's what men do." "Are you my family now, really?" "If you want me to be." Nathan nodded, too emotional to speak. Cole put an arm around the boy's shoulders, and they sat there together waiting to see if Henry would live or die. The night stretched into eternity. Pierce worked for hours. Grace took over watching the younger children, keeping them calm despite the tension that filled the house. Charlotte wrote in her journal, documenting everything, finding comfort in putting words on paper. Matthew kept watch outside, rifle ready in case Ashford's men tried anything during the crisis. Around 3 in the morning, something changed. The quality of silence from Henry's room shifted. Then Pierce opened the door. His face was exhausted, but he was smiling slightly. The fever broke. "He's going to make it." Eliza's knees gave out. Cole caught her before she hit the floor. She clung to him and cried great shaking sobs of relief and exhaustion and gratitude that her baby boy would live. Cole held her and felt his own eyes burn. He'd kept his promise. Against all odds, he'd kept his promise. Nathan stood and went to Cole. The boy's face was wet with tears, but he didn't care who saw. He wrapped his arms around Cole and whispered, "Thank you, Pa. Thank you for saving him." There it was again. Pa. Not angry or accidental this time. Chosen. Meant. Cole's voice was rough when he answered, "That's what fathers do, son. They save their children." The next days passed in recovery. Henry slowly regained his strength, going from barely breathing to fussing to finally laughing again. Dr. Pierce stayed 2 days to monitor him and declared it a miracle. Most babies don't survive lung fever like that. The fact that he did that, "You got me there in time," that's nothing short of miraculous. Cole and Eliza spent hours together during the recovery. She nursed Henry while Cole sat nearby, both of them exhausted but unable to sleep. They talked about everything and nothing, about their childhoods, their first loves, their losses, the things that had broken them, and the things that were slowly putting them back together. On the 3rd night, when Henry was finally sleeping peacefully, Eliza found Cole on the porch despite the cold. He stood looking at the stars, his breath frosting in the air. "You'll freeze out here," she said, but she came to stand beside him anyway. Just needed air, been cooped up too long. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Eliza spoke. "I love you." Cole turned to look at her. What? I love you. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you gave me your coat in the blizzard. Maybe when you taught Nathan to shoot. Maybe when you rode through hell itself to save my son. But it happened. She met his eyes. I love you, Cole McKenna. And I'm terrified of it, but I needed you to know. Cole reached out and cupped her face in his hand. I've loved you since you stepped off that train, watching you try to be brave when you were so afraid, seeing how you loved those children enough to sacrifice everything for them. That's when I knew. He kissed her then, soft at first, then deeper as she responded. It was nothing like kissing Sarah had been. This was different, new, its own thing. And that was all right. Love didn't have to be the same to be real. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Eliza smiled. What happens now? Now we keep fighting. For this, for them, for the life we're building together. And when we win, I'm going to marry you properly. In front of the whole territory. Make sure everyone knows you're mine and I'm yours. I'd like that. They went inside together, hands joined, ready to face whatever came next. The telegram arrived 2 days later. Sheriff Garrett brought it from town, personally, which meant it was important. Cole opened it while the whole family watched. It was from Samuel Blackwood, the lawyer in Helena. Found evidence, contract is forgery. Handwriting expert confirms. Hartwell illiterate. Signed with X, not signature. Have proof. Prepare for counterattack. Trial, January 15th. We will win. Cole read it aloud and the room erupted in cheers. Even the younger children celebrated, though they didn't fully understand what it meant. But there was a second telegram, also from Blackwood. Cole read this one silently first, and his expression darkened. What is it? Eliza asked. Ashford bribed the original judge, Mitchell, paid him $2,000 to rule in Ashford's favor regardless of evidence. But Blackwood filed an ethics complaint. Mitchell's been removed from the case. That's good news, isn't it? Yes, the new judge is Marcus Wheeler. Blackwood says he's fair, honest, hates corruption. It's the best we could have hoped for. Cole paused. But Ashford knows he lost that advantage, which means he'll try something else, something worse. Nathan stepped forward. Let him try. We're ready now. We've got proof, we've got the truth, and we've got you. Cole looked at his family. This family that had been strangers 6 weeks ago. This family that had become everything to him. Then we go to Helena. We fight this in court, and we end Vincent Ashford once and for all. Outside, snow began to fall again, but inside the McKenna ranch, surrounded by warmth and love and determination, they prepared for the battle that would decide all their futures. The storm was coming, but they would face it together. The journey to Helena took 3 days in the dead of winter. Cole drove the wagon himself with Eliza beside him on the bench seat. Matthew and Nathan rode in back rifles across their laps, alert for trouble. Sheriff Garrett rode alongside on his own horse. The younger children stayed behind with Abby Grace and the ranch hands. It was too dangerous to bring them all. The first night they camped beside a frozen creek, huddled around a fire that gave more light than heat. The temperature had dropped to 15 below, and the stars overhead looked close enough to touch, hard and bright and cold. Matthew took first watch while Nathan slept. Cole sat with Eliza near the fire, their breath making clouds in the frigid air. "Tell me about the judge," Eliza said. "This Wheeler." "Blackwood says he's fair, doesn't tolerate corruption or men who use the law as a weapon. He's been a territorial judge for 20 years, seen everything. Not easy to fool. But he still has to follow the law. And if Ashford's contract looks legal on paper, Wheeler might have to enforce it regardless of what he believes." Eliza pulled her blanket tighter. "So we could have the truth and still lose." "We could. But I don't think we will." Cole fed another stick into the fire. "Blackwood's good, the best in Montana. He's got the handwriting expert. He's got proof your father was illiterate. He's got the land survey showing Ashford's real motive. Truth's on our side. What if truth isn't enough? Cole looked at her, firelight casting shadows across his scarred face. Then we run. Take the children and disappear. Go to California, Oregon, somewhere Ashford can't find us. You'd do that. Give up your ranch, everything you've built. In a heartbeat. That land's just dirt. You and those children are family. He took her hand. I made you 6 promises, Elizabeth. The 6th one was that I wouldn't let Ashford take you. I meant it. Whatever it takes. She squeezed his fingers. 6 promises. I've lost count. Safety at the train station. Respect in my house. Sharing the burden. Protecting from Ashford. Saving Henry. And this. Not letting him take you no matter what the law says. You've kept everyone so far. And I'll keep this one too. From the shadows, Nathan watched them. He'd woken up and heard the whole conversation. Heard Cole promise to give up everything for their family. To run, if necessary. To choose them over his ranch, his home, his whole life. Nathan had hated this man once. Now he couldn't imagine life without him. The second night they stayed at a roadhouse 20 miles outside Helena. The proprietor, a widow named Mrs. Chen, gave them her best rooms when she heard why they were traveling. Vincent Ashford, she spat. I know that name. He tried to buy property from my late husband 5 years ago. When my husband refused, mysterious things started happening. Fires, accidents. Finally, my husband sold just to make it stop. Her eyes hardened. 2 months later, he was dead. Horse spooked and threw him. But that horse never spooked before in its life. You think Ashford had him killed? Cole asked. I think rich men like him don't stop until they get what they want. You be careful, Mr. McKenna. And you protect that woman and those boys. Ashford doesn't fight fair. That night, Cole found Eliza standing at the window of their room looking out at the darkness. Can't sleep, he asked. Too nervous. Tomorrow we reach Helena. Day after that, the trial. Everything we've built, everything we are, it all comes down to what happens in that courtroom. Cole came to stand behind her. Whatever happens, we face it together. Promise me something. Anything. If we lose, if the judge rules for Ashford, promise me you'll take the children and run. Don't try to save me. Just save them. Elizabeth, I can't do that. Promise me, Cole. She turned to face him. Those children need a father. You're the only father most of them remember now. If it comes down to choosing between me and them, choose them. Cole pulled her close. It won't come to that. We're going to win. We're going to walk out of that courtroom free, and then we're going to go home and get married and live the rest of our lives together. You hear me? I want to believe that. Then believe it. They held each other in the darkness, while outside snow began to fall again. Helena was bigger than Thunder Creek, more civilized, with brick buildings and gas lights and streets that had actual names. The territorial courthouse stood at the center of town, a 3-story stone building that looked like it had been transplanted from the east. Samuel Blackwood's office was 2 blocks away. The lawyer was 50 years old, gray-haired with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He greeted them with firm handshakes and got straight to business. The trial starts tomorrow at 9. Judge Wheeler doesn't waste time. Here's what we know. He spread papers across his desk. Ashford's contract is a forgery. Our handwriting expert, Professor Edmund Hayes from the University in Missoula, will testify that the signature doesn't match your father's hand. More importantly, we have your father's marriage certificate showing his actual mark. An X. Illiterate men don't suddenly learn elegant script. What about Ashford's claim on the land? Cole asked. That's trickier. He can't claim it directly, but if he marries Elizabeth and something happens to you, she'd inherit. Then, as her husband, he'd control it. It's a long game, but it could work. So he'd have to kill me. Blackwood nodded grimly. Or find some legal way to force you to sell. Either way, his end goal is your land, not Elizabeth. She's just the path to it. Eliza felt sick. All of this, all the fear and running and desperation, and she wasn't even what Ashford really wanted. Just a tool, a means to an end. Can we use that? Nathan asked. Show the judge what he's really after. We'll try. But Wheeler will want to focus on the contract itself, whether it's valid. Everything else is speculation unless we can prove intent. They spent hours reviewing testimony and preparing for questions. Blackwood drilled Eliza on what to say, how to answer the opposing lawyer's tricks, how to stay calm under pressure. As evening fell, Blackwood walked them to their hotel. On the steps he paused. One more thing. Ashford will try to intimidate you. He'll make threats, imply consequences. Don't let him rattle you. We have the law on our side. Remember that. But the law had failed before. Cole knew that. And rich men like Ashford had ways of bending it to their will. As if summoned by thought, Ashford appeared on the street corner. He stood there in his expensive coat, flanked by two of his men, and smiled when he saw them. Cole moved Eliza and the boys behind him. "Stay here." He walked toward Ashford. The two men faced each other in the gas-lit street, breath frosting between them. "McKenna, how civilized of you to come voluntarily." "I'm here to watch you lose." "Am I?" Ashford's smile widened. "I have 3 lawyers. You have 1. I have documentation. You have speculation. I have money to appeal and reappeal if necessary. What do you have?" "The truth." "Truth." Ashford laughed. "Truth is whatever the judge believes. And judges are human, fallible, subject to persuasion." "You already tried bribing a judge, didn't work. Did it not? Or did I simply adjust my strategy?" Ashford leaned closer. "Let me make you an offer, McKenna. One last time. $10,000. Cash. Today. Walk away. Let Elizabeth return with me. You keep your ranch, your life, everything. No trial, no ugliness. And Elizabeth becomes your slave. My wife, there's a difference. Not the way you'd do it." Cole's hand moved toward his gun. "My answer's the same as before. No." Ashford's expression hardened. "Then tomorrow you'll learn what it costs to defy me. And when I win, when Elizabeth is mine and your ranch is up for sale to cover the legal costs, remember this moment. Remember that you had a chance to walk away." He turned and walked off into the night, his men following. Cole stood there, hands shaking with rage he couldn't release. Matthew came up beside him. "Pa, you all right?" "Yeah, son, I'm all right. Just reminded myself why we're fighting." That night none of them slept well. Morning came cold and clear. They dressed in their best clothes, which weren't much. Cole had one suit, old but clean. Eliza wore the same dress she'd worn on the train from Ohio, carefully mended. Matthew and Nathan looked like what they were, frontier boys trying to look respectable for court. The courtroom filled early. Ashford arrived with his 3 lawyers, all in expensive suits, all carrying leather cases full of documents. They took up the entire plaintiff's table. Cole, Eliza, Matthew, Nathan, and Blackwood sat at the defense table. It looked sparse by comparison. David versus Goliath. Judge Marcus Wheeler entered at exactly 9 o'clock. He was 58, gray-bearded, with eyes that had seen every kind of human behavior and weren't impressed by much of it anymore. "This court is now in session. The matter of Vincent Ashford versus Elizabeth Hartwell. Mr. Carson, you may present your opening statement." Ashford's lead lawyer stood. He was smooth, polished, every word calculated for maximum impact. "Your Honor, this is a simple matter of contract law. Robert Hartwell borrowed $8,000 from my client. Unable to repay, he offered his daughter Elizabeth in marriage to settle the debt. This practice, while perhaps distasteful to modern sensibilities, is perfectly legal. The contract was signed. The debt was incurred. Elizabeth Hartwell is bound by her father's agreement. We ask the court to enforce this contract and compel Mrs. Hartwell to fulfill her obligation." He sat down. Wheeler turned to Blackwood. "Mr. Blackwood, Your Honor, this is not contract law. This is slavery by another name. The contract my learned colleague presents is a forgery." Robert Hartwell was illiterate. He could not have signed his name in the elegant script shown on that document. "We will prove the signature is fake. We will prove Vincent Ashford created this contract to seize control of valuable land belonging to Cole McKenna. And we will prove that Elizabeth Hartwell owes this man nothing." Wheeler nodded. "Proceed with testimony." The first witness was Ashford himself. He took the stand and lied with the confidence of a man who'd never been caught. "I lent Robert Hartwell money in good faith. He signed a contract promising repayment or in lieu of cash the hand of his daughter in marriage. It's all documented." Blackwood cross-examined carefully. "Mr. Ashford, when did you first learn about the gold deposits on Cole McKenna's land?" Objection. Relevance. Carson was on his feet immediately. "Your Honor, it goes to motive," Blackwood argued. Wheeler considered. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Ashford." "I don't know anything about gold on McKenna's land." "Really? No knowledge of the geological survey filed last summer? No awareness of the estimated value of mineral deposits on that property?" Ashford's smile never wavered. "Rumors and speculation. I'm interested in Elizabeth Hartwell fulfilling her father's obligation. Nothing more." It went on like that for an hour. Ashford deflecting Carson, objecting, Wheeler ruling. By the end, Cole could see the frustration on Blackwood's face. Then Eliza took the stand. She looked small in the witness chair, fragile. But when she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "Mrs. Hartwell," Carson began his cross-examination like a snake coiling to strike. "You lived in your father's house for 4 months after your husband died, did you not?" "Yes." "And during that time you accepted food, shelter, financial support from your father. I had 9 children and no money. What choice did I have? So you benefited from the money your father borrowed from my client. I didn't know where the money came from." "Convenient," Carson smiled. "And when your father died, why didn't you stay to settle his affairs? Why did you run?" "Because Vincent Ashford told me he owned me, that I had to marry him or he'd take my children away. Or you ran because you knew the debt was real and you were trying to avoid your obligation." "Objection," Blackwood said. "Badgering. Sustained." But the damage was done. Carson had planted the seed. Maybe Eliza was a liar, a cheat, a woman running from legitimate debts. Cole's testimony came next. He told the truth plainly. How he'd answered Eliza's advertisement, how he'd paid for train tickets, how Ashford had threatened them, how he'd discovered the real motive was land, not debt. But Carson shredded him on cross-examination. "Mr. McKenna, you're a lonely widower who saw an advertisement for a desperate woman. You paid money to bring her here. Isn't it true you're simply trying to keep your purchase?" Cole's hands clenched. "I didn't purchase anyone. I helped a family in need." How convenient that this family in need came with a beautiful widow attached. "Tell me, Mr. McKenna, did you consummate your relationship with Mrs. Hartwell before or after you learned about Mr. Ashford's claim, 'That's nobody's business but ours'? So you did sleep with her, with another man's legal fiancée. That makes you guilty of alienation of affection, at minimum." Blackwood objected furiously, but the damage was done. Now Cole looked like a man who'd stolen another man's bride for his own desires. The handwriting expert testified, showed the differences between the contract signature and Robert Hartwell's actual mark. It was compelling evidence. But Carson's expert testified that illiterate men sometimes learn to sign their names for important contracts, back and forth, point and counterpoint, the truth getting buried under legal maneuvering and expert opinions. By late afternoon, Blackwood looked worried. "It's not going well. Wheeler's skeptical, but he's following the law. And technically, even a forged contract can be binding if there's evidence the agreement existed in some form." "So we're losing," Eliza said. "We might be." Cole stood and walked to the window. Outside, Helena went about its business. People who didn't care that his whole world was falling apart. Nathan watched his mother cry quietly. Watched Cole stare out the window with defeat in his shoulders. Watched Matthew trying to hold himself together and failing. Something broke open in Nathan's chest. A wall he'd been building since his real father died. A barrier between him and the world that said He'd never let anyone matter that much again. But these people mattered. His mother, his brothers and sisters, and Cole. Especially Cole. The man who'd ridden through a blizzard to save Henry, who'd taught Nathan to shoot and to trust and to hope. Nathan stood up. "I want to testify." Everyone turned to look at him. "Son, you're 13, Blackwood said gently. "The court won't give much weight to a child's testimony. I don't care. I want to tell the judge what I know, what I've seen, please." Blackwood looked at Cole. Cole looked at Nathan and saw something in the boy's eyes. Determination, purpose. The kind of strength that comes from finally knowing who you are and what you're fighting for. "Let him speak," Cole said. The next morning, Nathan Hartwell took the witness stand. He wore his best clothes, which were still just frontier boy clothes, patched and worn. He looked small in the chair, young, but when Judge Wheeler asked him to state his name, his voice didn't shake. "Nathan Hartwell. I'm 13 years old." "Young man," Wheeler said kindly, "you understand you're under oath. You must tell the truth." "Yes, sir, and I will. That's why I'm here." Wheeler nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Blackwood. Nathan, tell the court about your family, about what happened after your father died." Nathan took a breath and began. "My father, William, died 8 months ago, typhoid fever. We lost the farm, lost everything. My mother tried to keep us together, but there wasn't enough food, wasn't enough of anything. We were going to be split up, sent to different orphanages, never see each other again." His voice grew stronger. "Then Mama found Mr. McKenna's advertisement. He was looking for someone to help run his ranch. He'd pay for passage, give us a home. We didn't know what he'd be like. Mama was scared he'd be cruel. I was scared too." "And was he cruel?" Blackwood asked. "No, sir, he was kind. First thing he did when we got off the train was give Mama his coat, in a blizzard. He could have frozen, but he cared more about baby Henry being warm. Then he took us home and fed us, gave us rooms, treated us like we were people, not burdens." Nathan looked directly at Ashford. "That man there says my mother belongs to him, that some paper my grandfather signed means he owns her like property. But here's what I know. Mr. McKenna doesn't own us. He chose us, and we chose him." Wheeler leaned forward, interested now. "When my baby brother Henry got sick with lung fever, Mr. McKenna rode 12 miles through the worst blizzard I've ever seen. Temperature was 25 below. Wind was so bad you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. He rode through that to bring back a doctor. He almost died doing it, for a baby that wasn't even his blood." Nathan's voice broke, but he pushed through. "I hated Mr. McKenna when we first arrived. Hated him because he wasn't my real father. Because I thought he was trying to replace Papa. But he never tried to replace anyone. He just loved us. He taught me to shoot, taught Matthew to ranch, gave Charlotte books, made Emma feel safe. He became our father not because he bought us or owned us, but because he chose to be." Tears ran down Nathan's face now, but he didn't care. "And yesterday when I heard Mr. Ashford's lawyer talk about my mother like she was something you could buy and sell something to be owned, I realized something. Real fathers don't own their children. They protect them. They sacrifice for them. They ride through blizzards to save them." Nathan stood up in the witness box, looking straight at Judge Wheeler. "Mr. McKenna's not my blood father, but he's my pa. And my pa doesn't deserve to have his family ripped apart by some rich man who wants his land. None of us deserve that. We're a family. Not because of contracts or money or debt, because we chose each other. And that's worth more than any piece of paper." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even Ashford's lawyers had nothing to say. Nathan's voice dropped to almost a whisper, but in the silence it carried clearly. "Please, Your Honor, please don't let that man take my mother. Please don't destroy my family. My pa, Cole McKenna, he deserves happiness. He deserves to have a family again, and we deserve to stay together." Nathan sat back down. Tears streamed down his face, but his eyes were clear. He'd said what needed to be said. The courtroom erupted, not in noise but in emotion. Men and women in the gallery were openly crying. One of the jurors wiped his eyes. Even Judge Wheeler had to clear his throat before speaking. Carson tried to cross-examine, but his questions died on his lips when Nathan looked at him with those tear-stained eyes and that unwavering conviction. "No further questions," Carson muttered. Wheeler called a recess, 10 minutes that felt like hours. When they reconvened, Wheeler looked at both legal teams. "I've heard enough. I'm ready to rule." Wheeler called a recess, 10 minutes that felt like hours. Cole held Eliza's hand under the table. Nathan sat between them and Matthew, still shaking from the emotional weight of his testimony. The courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations. Ashford's lawyers huddled together, looking worried for the first time. When Wheeler returned, the room fell silent. He sat, arranged his papers, and looked at both legal teams with an expression that revealed nothing. "I've heard enough," he said. "I'm ready to rule." His eyes moved to Nathan, still sitting in the witness box, then to Eliza, then to Cole, and finally to Ashford. Wheeler's hand reached for his gavel. The fate of the McKenna family, everything they'd built and fought for, came down to what he would say next. In that moment, time itself seemed to stop, and 50 people held their breath as one. The gavel rose. Judge Marcus Wheeler stood, and the entire courtroom held its breath. He was a man who had seen 20 years of humanity at its worst and occasionally at its best. He had ruled on murders and thefts, on land disputes, and mining claims, on questions of law that would have broken lesser men. But this case was different. Everyone in the room knew it. Wheeler looked at the papers before him. Then he looked at Nathan, still sitting in the witness box, with tears drying on his young face. Then he looked at Ashford, sitting smug and certain at the plaintiff's table. "I have been a judge for 2 decades, Wheeler began. "In that time, I have seen every manner of legal manipulation. I have seen rich men use the law as a cudgel. I have seen the powerful exploit the desperate. And I have seen contracts twisted to serve purposes their writers never intended." He picked up Ashford's contract and held it up. This document purports to be a valid agreement between Robert Hartwell and Vincent Ashford. On its surface, it appears legitimate. It has dates, it has terms, it has a signature, but the law is not merely about what appears on paper. It is about truth, it is about justice, and it is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Wheeler set the contract down. "I have reviewed the testimony of Professor Hayes, the handwriting expert. I find his analysis compelling. Robert Hartwell was illiterate. The evidence is clear. His marriage certificate, witnessed and notarized, shows his mark as a simple X. Yet this contract bears an elegant flowing signature. The conclusion is inescapable. This signature is a forgery." Ashford's face went pale. Carson half stood, then sat back down. There was nothing to object to. Wheeler was stating facts. "Furthermore," Wheeler continued, "I find Mr. Ashford's motives highly suspect. The timing of this contract, created after Robert Hartwell's death, combined with evidence of valuable mineral deposits on Cole McKenna's land, suggests a pattern of fraud designed not to collect a legitimate debt, but to seize property through marriage to Elizabeth Hartwell." The judge's voice grew harder. "This court will not be party to such schemes. I find the contract between Vincent Ashford and Robert Hartwell to be fraudulent and void. Elizabeth Hartwell has no obligation, financial or otherwise, to Vincent Ashford. She is free to marry whom she chooses or to remain unmarried as she sees fit." Eliza gasped. Cole grabbed her hand and held on tight. "Moreover," Wheeler said, and now his eyes were on Ashford like a hawk spotting prey, "I am ordering Vincent Ashford to pay $5,000 in damages to the McKenna family for harassment, attempted fraud, and abuse of the legal system. I am also recommending to the United States Marshal that Mr. Ashford be investigated for forgery of legal documents, attempted bribery of a federal judge, and conspiracy to commit fraud." Wheeler brought his gavel down once hard. "This case is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Ashford, you are not to contact, approach, or in any way communicate with Elizabeth McKenna or any member of her family. If you violate this order, you will be held in contempt and jailed. Do you understand?" Ashford stood, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. "This is an outrage. I will appeal. I will take this to the Territorial Supreme Court. I will take it to Washington if I have to." "Appeal all you want," Wheeler said coldly, "but do it from outside Montana Territory. Marshal, see that Mr. Ashford and his associates leave Helena within the hour, and make sure they understand what happens if they return." The United States Marshal, a big man with a bigger gun, stood from where he'd been watching in the back. "Yes, Your Honor, with pleasure." Ashford looked at Cole, at Eliza, at Nathan. His eyes promised revenge, promised that this wasn't over. But his words were cut off as the marshal took his arm. "Let's go, Mr. Ashford. You heard the judge." As Ashford was escorted from the courtroom, the gallery erupted. People cheered. Strangers hugged. Sheriff Garrett was grinning ear to ear. Blackwood shook Cole's hand so hard it hurt. But Cole only had eyes for Eliza. She was crying, her whole body shaking with relief and joy and disbelief that it was finally over. "We won," she whispered. "Cole, we won." He pulled her into his arms right there in front of everyone. "We won." Nathan climbed down from the witness box, and Matthew met him halfway. The two brothers embraced both of them, crying openly now. No shame in it, just relief and love and the knowledge that their family was safe. Cole reached out and pulled both boys into the embrace with him and Eliza. The four of them stood there in the middle of the courtroom holding each other, while around them the celebration continued. Wheeler watched from the bench and smiled. This, he thought, was what the law was supposed to do: protect the innocent, punish the wicked, give families a chance to stay together. Outside the courthouse, word spread fast. By the time Cole and his family emerged, a crowd had gathered. Townspeople who'd heard about the trial, farmers who'd dealt with men like Ashford before, families who knew what it meant to fight for what was yours. They clapped, they cheered. A few of them cried. Reverend Cooper from Thunder Creek had traveled to Helena for the trial. Now he pushed through the crowd with a wide smile. "Cole McKenna, I've been authorized by the church to perform marriages anywhere in the territory. If you and Mrs. Hartwell would like to make this official, I'd be honored to do it." Cole looked at Eliza. "What do you say? Want to marry me today, right now?" She laughed through her tears. "I want to marry you in front of our whole community, in our church, with all our children there. Is that all right?" "That's more than all right. That's perfect." They made the journey back to Thunder Creek in half the time it had taken to get to Helena. The threat was gone. The fear had lifted. They were going home. When they arrived at the ranch 3 days later, the younger children poured out of the house. Grace and Charlotte and Thomas and Emma and James and little Lucy and baby Henry, all of them shouting and laughing and asking 100 questions at once. Cole gathered them all together in the parlor that evening and told them everything that had happened. How Nathan had testified, how the judge had ruled, how they were safe now, how nothing and no one could separate them ever again. Emma climbed into his lap, something she'd been too shy to do before. "So you're really our pa now, forever, forever and always, sweetheart." "Good, because I love you." Cole's throat tightened. "I love you too, all of you." 3 days after their return from Helena, Eliza woke feeling ill. Not sick exactly, but different. A familiar queasiness that she recognized immediately, having felt it 9 times before. She waited another week to be certain. Then she told Cole. They were alone in the barn, Cole checking on a mare about to foal. Eliza stood in the doorway, hands clasped nervously. "Cole, I need to tell you something." He turned, saw her expression, and his face showed concern. "What's wrong? Are you ill?" "Not ill. She took a breath. "I'm carrying a child. Our child." Cole went completely still. For a long moment he just stared at her. Then he crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "A baby," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "Our baby. I know it's soon. I know we just got married. I know there are risks at my age, and—" He stopped her with a kiss. "This is a gift, a blessing. After everything we've been through, this is proof that we're starting fresh, building something new together." His hands moved to her stomach, still flat, but holding new life. "When? Late summer, August, maybe early September. Then we have time to prepare, time to make sure you're safe and healthy." He kissed her forehead. "Thank you. For this. For everything." Eliza rested her head against his chest and felt hope bloom. They had survived Ashford, survived the trial, built a family from strangers. Now they would add to it their own child, a symbol of everything they'd overcome. The wedding was set for the following Sunday, January 25th, 1 month to the day after the trial. Plenty of time to prepare, but not so long that they had to wait through another Montana winter in fear. The women of Thunder Creek descended on the ranch like a benevolent storm. They measured Eliza for a dress. They planned food. They decorated the church with pine boughs and white ribbons. By the time Sunday arrived, the little frontier church looked like something out of a fairy tale. Cole stood at the altar in his one good suit, brushed and pressed until it looked almost new. Matthew stood beside him as best man, tall and proud, in clothes borrowed from Pete. Nathan and Thomas were groomsmen, their hair slicked down their faces, scrubbed clean. Grace was maid of honor in a dress made by the church women, soft blue cotton, that made her look older than her 15 years. Charlotte and Emma and Lucy were bridesmaids in matching dresses. Even little James had a role carrying the rings on a small pillow. And Henry, now healthy and strong, was passed between family members, gurgling happily at all the attention. The church filled to capacity. Every family within 20 miles had come, ranchers and farmers and townspeople, Zeke and Pete and John Crow in their Sunday best, Abby in a dress she swore she'd never wear again, but looked beautiful anyway. Sheriff Garrett and Dr. Pierce, and even Judge Wheeler, who'd ridden from Helena just to witness this union he'd helped make possible. Then the doors opened and Eliza appeared. She wore white. Not fancy lace or expensive silk, but simple cotton sewn with love by women who understood what this day meant. Her hair was down dark and shining in the winter sunlight streaming through the windows. She carried wildflowers that Grace had preserved somehow through the cold. She walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away. She didn't need one. She was giving herself freely by choice to the man she loved. Cole watched her come toward him and felt his heart stop and restart. She was beautiful. She had always been beautiful, but today she was radiant. When she reached him, he took her hands and couldn't speak for a moment, just looked at her with everything he felt written plain on his face. Reverend Cooper smiled. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Cole McKenna and Elizabeth Hartwell in holy matrimony. And I can tell you, I've performed a lot of weddings in my years, but I've never seen two people more meant for each other than these two." There was laughter and agreement from the congregation. "Cole, do you have vows you wish to speak?" Cole nodded. He'd practiced these words for a week, but now looking at Eliza, they came from his heart without effort. "Elizabeth, 2 months ago, you stepped off a train into a blizzard with 9 children and more courage than I've seen in any soldier I ever fought beside. You came looking for safety, and I promised to give it to you. But you gave me something I didn't even know I needed. You gave me purpose. You gave me family. You gave me a reason to be more than just a man surviving. You made me want to live again." His voice roughened, but he pushed on. "I promise to love you every day for the rest of my life. I promise to be a good husband to you and a good father to your children, who are now my children too. I promise to stand beside you in good times and bad, in sickness and health, until death parts us. And I promise that no one, not Vincent Ashford or anyone else, will ever threaten this family again while I draw breath." Eliza was crying openly now. Cooper turned to her. "Elizabeth, your vows." She took a shaky breath. "Cole McKenna, when I answered your advertisement, I thought I was giving up everything. My freedom, my future, any hope of happiness. I thought I was sacrificing myself so my children could live. But you showed me I was wrong. You showed me that good men still exist, that kindness isn't weakness, that love can happen twice in one lifetime." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to love you and honor you. I promise to be your partner, not your servant. I promise to build this life with you, to raise these children with you, to grow old with you. And I promise that William, my first husband, would be proud of the man who's taking care of his children. Because you are everything I could have hoped for, and more than I ever dared to dream." There wasn't a dry eye in the church. Cooper pronounced them husband and wife, and Cole kissed Eliza to thunderous applause. The children cheered loudest of all. Nathan was crying and didn't care who saw. Matthew was grinning so wide his face hurt. Grace was sobbing into Charlotte's shoulder. The reception was held in the church hall. Tables groaned under the weight of food the community had brought. There was music and dancing and laughter that shook the rafters. Cole danced with Eliza first, then with each of his daughters. Grace was graceful. Charlotte was shy. Emma giggled the whole time. Lucy just held onto his legs and let him shuffle her around. When the dancing slowed, Cole gathered all 9 children together. "I want to tell each of you something," he said. "A promise, because that's what today is about. Promises." He looked at Matthew. "You're going to inherit this ranch someday. I'll teach you everything I know. How to manage the land, the cattle, the finances. You'll be a fine rancher, better than me." Matthew stood taller. To Grace, "You're smart enough to be anything you want. If you want to go to school to become a teacher or anything else, I'll make it happen. Your dreams matter." And to Nathan, "You've got fire in you, son. Courage, the kind that makes great men. I'm going to teach you to channel that strength into protecting what matters. You're going to do important things." To Charlotte, "You're a writer. I see it in you. I'm going to make sure you have every book you want, every piece of paper you need. The world needs to hear your stories." To Thomas, "You're going to be the finest horseman in Montana. I'll teach you everything I know about horses and cattle and working the land you love." To Emma, "You're braver than you think. I'm going to help you see that. You're going to grow up knowing you can do anything." To James, "Your curiosity is a gift. Never stop asking questions. Never stop wondering. I'll answer everyone as best I can." To Lucy, "You're my sunshine. You make every day brighter just by being in it." And finally to Henry, who couldn't understand but was listening anyway, "You're going to grow up in a house full of love. You'll never know hunger or fear or uncertainty. That's my promise to you." He looked at all of them together. "You're not just my family now. You're my purpose, my legacy, my reason for everything. I love you all, forever." The children surrounded him, all of them talking at once, hugging him and each other and Eliza, a tangle of arms and love and belonging. It was the best day of Cole McKenna's life. Sarah Ruth McKenna was born on September 12, 1879, after a long labor that left Eliza exhausted but triumphant. Dr. Pierce attended the birth and pronounced both mother and baby healthy. Cole held his daughter for the first time and wept openly. She had dark hair like his, but Eliza's green eyes, a perfect blend of both of them, a living symbol of their love. The 9 children crowded around to meet their new sister. Nathan was the first to hold her after Cole cradling her with surprising gentleness for a 14-year-old boy. "She's so small," he whispered. "You were that small once," Eliza said from the bed, smiling despite her exhaustion. Nathan looked down at the baby and made a promise silently. He would protect this little sister the way Cole had protected all of them. He would be the kind of brother, the kind of man that Cole had taught him to be. Sarah Ruth McKenna grew up surrounded by love. 10 siblings, 2 parents, and a legacy of courage that would shape her entire life. 25 years passed. The summer of 1904 was warm and golden across Montana. The McKenna Ranch had grown to 2,000 acres. The cattle herd numbered in the hundreds. The main house had been expanded twice and now had 12 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, even indoor plumbing, which was still a rarity on the frontier. Cole McKenna, now 62 years old, sat on the porch in his rocking chair. His hair had gone completely white. His face was more lined, but his eyes were still sharp and his hands still strong. Eliza sat beside him, 54 now, her own hair streaked with silver, but her smile still the same one that had captured his heart all those years ago. They watched their family arrive for the annual reunion. Matthew came first, 42 years old now, riding up with his wife Sarah and their 4 children. He managed the ranch these days, Cole having officially retired 5 years ago. Matthew had turned out to be an even better rancher than Cole had hoped. Grace arrived next with her husband Pete, the former ranch hand who'd fallen in love with her when she was 16. They had 3 daughters, all of them teachers like Grace had become. Nathan rode in on horseback wearing a sheriff's badge. He'd become sheriff of Thunder Creek at age 30 and had kept the peace for 12 years now. His wife Emily, Dr. Pierce's daughter, rode beside him with their 2 children. Charlotte came by buggy from Helena. She'd published 5 novels now, the last one a bestseller across the territory. She remained unmarried, but happy, living the life of an independent woman writer. Thomas managed the northern section of the ranch with his wife Maria and their 5 children. The house was never quiet with that crew. Emma had shocked everyone by becoming a doctor. She'd studied under Dr. Pierce and now ran a practice in Silver Falls. Her husband was a lawyer, and they had 1 daughter. James, the boy who'd asked endless questions, had become an engineer. He designed bridges and roads throughout Montana and Wyoming. He came with his wife and 2 sons. Lucy taught music in Thunder Creek. Her husband was a musician, and they had 1 daughter with another child on the way. And Henry the baby, who'd almost died that terrible winter, was now a veterinarian. At 26, he was the youngest, but perhaps the most driven. He'd just gotten engaged to a rancher's daughter from the next county. All told, there were nearly 50 people gathered at the ranch that evening. 9 children grown, their spouses, 28 grandchildren ranging from newborn to 20 years old. 3 great-grandchildren had just been added in the past year. Abby, now 85 and mostly blind, but still sharp as a tack, sat in a place of honor at the head of the long outdoor table. As the sun began to set, Cole stood. He had to use a cane now, his old war wound finally catching up with him, but his voice was still strong. "Family," he said, and the conversations quieted. "Thank you all for coming. Looking at all of you, I'm reminded of a day 25 years ago when I stood at a train station in a blizzard, waiting for a woman and 9 children I'd never met." He looked at Eliza, and she smiled. "I was a broken man then, lost my first wife, Sarah, and my daughter Emily 7 years before that. Thought my life was over, thought I'd just exist until I died. Then Elizabeth stepped off that train, and everything changed." His voice grew thick with emotion. "She didn't just give me a family, she gave me back my life. And you 9, you taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up every day and choosing to love each other even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." He gestured to the crowd around him. 28 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren so far, all of you the product of one frozen night when I chose kindness over loneliness, when your grandmother chose courage over fear, when we all chose each other. Cole's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. "I've kept every promise I made. To Elizabeth. To each of you kids. And now I'm making one more. As long as I live, this ranch is yours. All of yours. Not to fight over or divide up, but to share. To come back to remember where you came from and who you are." He raised his glass. "To family, to love, to the courage to start over even when you think you can't, and to Elizabeth, the woman who saved me by letting me save her. 50 people raised their glasses. To family. The celebration went long into the night. Music and stories and laughter. Matthew's oldest son, 15, now asked Cole to tell the story about riding through the blizzard to save Uncle Henry. Cole told it for the 100th time, and it never got old. Nathan's daughter wanted to hear about the trial, about how her father had testified and helped save the family. Nathan told that story, his voice still full of pride, at what his 13-year-old self had done. As midnight approached, people began to settle in for sleep. Bedrolls in the barn, blankets in the parlor, tents outside for the overflow. The ranch was full of life and love and everything Cole had hoped for. He and Eliza sat on the porch one last time watching the stars. "Do you have any regrets?" Eliza asked. "Not a single one. Only that I didn't find you sooner." Cole laughed. "We found each other exactly when we needed to. That's all that matters." They rocked in comfortable silence, hands joined, watching the Montana sky. "What do you think they'll remember about us?" Eliza asked. "I hope they remember we kept our promises, that we loved them without conditions, that we built something that lasted." Cole squeezed her hand. "And I hope they remember that it's never too late to start over, to love again, to choose hope over despair. That's a good legacy. It's the only legacy that matters." They sat until the stars wheeled overhead and the night grew cold. Then they went inside together to the bed that would be theirs for the rest of their lives in the house full of family they had built together. Cole McKenna died peacefully in his sleep in 1915 at the age of 74. Eliza was beside him. Eliza McKenna lived another 7 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren who loved her fiercely. She died in 1922 at 73. They were buried together on the hill behind the ranch, their graves side by side. Sarah and Emily McKenna's graves remained nearby. 4 headstones, 2 families, 1 man who had loved them all. The McKenna Ranch remained in the family. As of 2024, it is still operating, managed by the 6th generation of McKennas. There are now 127 descendants of Cole and Elizabeth scattered across the United States. Vincent Ashford died in prison in 1889, serving a sentence for fraud and attempted bribery. No one attended his funeral. The Thunder Creek Church, where Cole and Elizabeth married, still stands. A plaque inside tells their story. Every year, on January 25th, the anniversary of their wedding, someone places fresh flowers at the altar. Because some love stories, some promises kept, some families built from courage and kindness deserve to be remembered forever. The end.